he kind of looked across the creek, and he said, 40, 50 feet on the other side was this human-like hairy creature, and just raising a lot of hell. Back in the car, get in the car, get the kid in the car. My name's David Wickham, and I live in Coshocton, Ohio, with my lovely wife, Lisa. We're celebrating our 20 years of being married this year, so I'm pretty happy. She lets me get away with going out and looking for a Bigfoot, a big hairy guy in the woods, and she figures that that's probably a better place to be than other options. But I'm a physical therapist. Been practicing for over 32 years now. So part of my job is to help people regain their ability to walk again, and that kind of helps me when I'm out looking at prints, that I can start maybe analyzing gait patterns, cadence, step length, and even getting into what the casting might show after you're able to pull the casting. I grew up in Southeast Ohio, and being over 50, grew up with loving anything that was monster, UFO, ghost related. I remember watching The Legend of Boggy Creek and In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, Mystery Monsters. I think I read that book and over and over again till I destroyed the backing. But I grew up just down the road from this guy who was having Bigfoot meetings, Don Keating. And I always told my dad, "Hey, Dad, I want to go to this Bigfoot meeting." And Dad said, "Nah, we don't have time for that silliness." So, life kind of goes on, and, I hunt, fish, was in sports, graduated from high school, went to Ohio University. That's where I earned my degree in physical therapy. And wasn't until I kind of got back out and was practicing in the local hospital where that you started hearing rumors of Bigfoot at Salt Fork. And I'm thinking, oh, that's cool. I had my junior prom at Salt Fork. I never saw Bigfoot. So go on a few more years, starting to have a family, and Finding Bigfoot TV show came on, and was just mesmerized by each episode and all the different interviews and evidences that they were proposing. So me and a friend, a coworker, we found out that the BFRO had expeditions that you could go and get experience. And so we went down, and it was in West Virginia. And what's really cool is that this year they are going to be having the expedition for the BFRO in West Virginia at the same spot we had when I first got into it.
Hi, I'm Linda Eastburn of Linda Eastburn YouTube channel, and I have a new book out called Threshold to Encounters. It's about 40 years of research and experience with all of these wild cryptids that many of you I know have encountered yourself. You can find it on Amazon.com.
But after that, I just started grabbing books and going to conferences and meetings, and starting to be a real pain in the butt with some of the guys who were researching at that time. And finally, they started to invite me to go along. And at that point, it's just ballooned into something that's fun. I enjoy it. I meet lots of cool, great people, witnesses that have amazing stories. And along the way, I try to collect either magazines, books, periodicals, or stories and evidence that hopefully one of these days will maybe prove that Sasquatch is alive and well.
Absolutely. Did you ever find out what went on in those meetings when you were young, but you didn't get to go to them? Did you ever find out what they were actually doing or talking about?
Well, life has a fun way of circling back if you just give it enough time. And because I live locally, I had the opportunity to reach out to Don Keating and have had multiple times to spend out in the woods with him, walking or eating dinner with him. And the gentleman is the forefather of Ohio Bigfooting or squatching in Ohio. He was doing it when it wasn't cool, when it wasn't a moneymaker, wasn't egos or being on TV. He's written lots of books, and he's a wealth of knowledge. And it's still fun to get together with him every once in a while and talk about a sighting or something. And or one time I interviewed a witness, and I pulled out the map and I showed him where the witness had seen it, and then he was able to recall a sighting nearby that was 2 years prior to that gentleman's road crossing. So just a wealth of information. So I'm lucky to be able to give him a call, and every once in a while just bump ideas off of him or hear him recall some of the area sightings. So Don was just having meetings. His purpose was to share information. Bigfooting was really at a juvenile state. People were just starting to put one and one together and formulating hypothesis about what it was, and doing research about earlier sightings that were just maybe mentioned in books, and actually going out and creating theories and databases of sightings in different areas.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in Ohio, I know, because I've interviewed a lot of people that have had sightings in Ohio and Pennsylvania and all in that area. So you went to these BFRO expeditions. At what age were you when you finally made it out to those?
It was 2000, let's see, 2020, 2012, 2014, something like that, 2012, I think. So I can't reverse math that, but it wasn't as old, just about 14 years ago, 12, 14 years ago.
So it took
that we
you a
went to the
while.
first one.
It took you a
Yeah.
while from that early age of interest before you ever got to a place where you were actually out in the woods hunting for them or looking for them.
Right. Yeah. I think life has a way of getting you back into a field or something that you was. Well, I laugh because I am enjoying where I'm at now. My kids are adults, are out of the house. I have a little bit of disposable income, sometimes a little bit of disposable time, and I get to be a kid again, because the things that I dreamed of or was excited about when I was a kid was ghosts and Loch Ness Monster and UFOs and Bigfoot. And I am blessed that I'm in a position now that I can actually spend some time and investigate those phenomena.
So in your expeditions out there in the woods, or your research out there in the woods, what all have you heard, seen, observed regarding Bigfoot?
It's kind of funny, but after a while, when you hear tree knocks, that was the first thing that got you excited, because you would hear a tree knock pop. And again, there's sounds in the woods, and there's trees that fall, and there's branches that fall. So that sound isn't necessarily a foreign sound in the woods, but what we usually call is a home run, where it just sounds like somebody took a Louisville slugger and hit a tree as hard as they could. That was what first got my my heart rate going, and then we started hearing whoops and maybe some yells, and you would compare those to things like the Ohio howl or maybe the Sierra sounds, and you just thought, boy, it's just that doesn't sound human. And what it's been fun is trying to improve my understanding of what it could be by listening to bobcat sounds and owl sounds and other animals that we do know, and in their mating calls, distress calls, what is it? And like a bobcat, in Ohio we've had an uptick in bobcat populations, and they have a wail that sounds like a woman screaming. So that's the kind of the thing we normally hear when we go out in the woods. So it's not a bad day, but we usually get one or two or three those in the Coshocton area if you're out all night. But a few times I've had a rock thrown at me, which was really, really scary because I was just kind of looking in the area to get familiarized with the topography, and heard something coming through the branches of the trees. And I thought it was either a squirrel or a grouse or something like that. And it kind of crossed about a foot or two in front of me, and it was a rock. And I kind of like went, what is that doing? And I kind of followed its trajectory, and it hit the ground, and I was still kind of waiting for it to grow wings or feet or something and run away. And it just laid there. And I went, oh, okay, something just threw that at me. It was about the size of a baked potato. It wasn't like huge, but it wasn't small. And I'm like, okay. So I kind of took off down the trail away from the exit that I should have been going on. And I firmly believe that there wasn't another human being in that area, because for me to walk to where I was at, I had to walk by a small parking area for the wildlife area that I was in, and there wasn't any vehicle there. And to get to that area would have been a very difficult hike from any other place. And I kind of went the wrong way and went up and around, and I finally got some cell phone signal, and I called a friend of mine, Mark Mazel, who was at the time in the BFRO, and I said, what do I do? I had a rock thrown at me, and he says, go back. And I was like, oh no. So I went back to the area and looked around, and it looked like a choke point. There was two trees that I actually had to go over to get to this choke point, and there were scratchings there. And even to this day, I still will occasionally go down that trail and find turkeys that are looking for grubs or whatever in that area. And so I really think that I was encroaching upon something that was hunting and was waiting for some type of animal to get to that area. And I kind of ruined it. And he just kind of she, it, whatever, kind of let me know that I wasn't welcome.
Yeah. So when the rock throwing happened, did you hear any sounds, smell anything? Was there any other evidence with that?
No, I looked around. It's where I live at is Woodbury Wildlife Preserve, and it's a reclaimed coal mining area that's now public hunting fishing land. And it was just the only thing that it came from was an evergreen grove. And so I could see underneath all the trees, and the foliage wasn't like a lot of cover. So I was really perplexed of where that item had come from, but there wasn't no smell. I don't think anything was in distress. I think the smell comes from when they are stressed out, and it's a mechanism to ward off maybe the natural animals in the area. But also, I have a theory that I think the sweat from the smell, the sweat that goes along with the smell, also kind of acts as a catalyst for their camouflaging in between their hair. I think that the sweat and the glands kind of allows this hair that we feel that the follicles are a little bit special in the Sasquatch hair, where people have gotten some they feel that legitimate samples. I think it's kind of like bends the light, and it kind of acts as a catalyst. And it doesn't make them invisible, but it starts breaking up their figure. It starts breaking out their outline, so they become more associated with the colors and the textures that they're standing beside. So that's just something that I was thinking of doing my research and reading books, trying to put the puzzles together.
You mentioned the Sierra sounds, and that some of the noise, some of the sounds, the vocals that you've heard remind you of the Sierra sounds. Tell me about those.
I think it's the ones that was a great example was at Salt Fork, and we really wasn't doing any big footing. We were actually there was a conference there, and me and my friend Mark were, and another gentleman was there to kind of do some trail walking because they're one of the activities they offer during the conference is walking the Bigfoot trail that had a sighting. We tell a story and we get people out to have some fun. But some friends of ours who also were in Bigfooting were there to do a drone work on a documentary just for the history of the park. And we found out that they were camping in an area that is a lot utilized by the Boy Scouts. So we decided, as good friends should, we should go down there and mess with them. And so we kind of walked in on them where they were camping. It was kind of a primitive area. And they were unsuccessfully having a problem starting a fire because they didn't have the right material and it wasn't dry enough. And so we were there making fun of them as friends should do. And none of us had any equipment. And we're just having a ball. We're just guys hanging out. And all of a sudden, down in the woods, we just heard this, just the gargles, samurai chatter is what's been named at before. And we all just kind of like stopped and looked at each other like, are we really hearing this? And it sounded like two individuals like making fun of us. Like, you look and see these these stupid guys making a fire. And we're just kind of looking at each other. None of us had any recorders or going off, but there was 5 of us, and we're just kind of looking at us, and it kept on going for a couple minutes, and then all of a sudden there was we felt a third entity that came in that had a rougher, deeper voice, and it kind of like chastised them, like, you know, shut up or get away or what are you guys doing? And we're like, well, that's strange. And then all of a sudden the full moon came up over the range and just lit the whole area up like it was a Friday night football game. And we didn't see anything, and we went down there and looked around, but we didn't really find any footprints per se, but we didn't have any equipment either. But it was just really, really strange. And it was like we was all looking at each other like, gosh, that would have been great to record. But at least we had multiple witnesses hearing it.
Exactly. And I've heard of that before. And even in that general area, I've heard of that sound coming from there. Not everywhere.
The other part that I would add is that it's really a shame because, again, me going out and talking and trying to put pieces together, and that was a time where Bigfooting groups wouldn't really comfortably share their findings or what they were getting from certain areas. And come to find out years later, talking to another group that had been there a couple weeks before us, they had this same experience. And it was a shame that we couldn't put that 1 + 1 = 2 together and share that information. But at the time, a lot of us just weren't speaking to each other.
Mm-hmm. And why was that? Was it just a disconnect of the groups, or?
I think everybody at the time was trying to prove that they were better than the other, or they had better evidence than this other group, or there's in every hobby, even like UFOs or ghost hunting, there's always that fear someone's going to take your hard-earned research and claim it as their own and somehow monetize it or promote it to where you don't get any credit for it. So it's still bad like that at times. But at that time, that was the one thing I kind of just shook my head and said, gosh, if we would have been communicating, we could have made phone calls right away and at least put maybe some clues together.
Exactly. You know, and I've heard of this before, that there's a lot of territorial ownership of various pieces of information, but there are some other groups that are trying to be more joined and share information to be able to, you know, to get more details about the whole situation. So you have been on how many of these campouts, or since 2012 you've been active? So tell me about your research since then.
Um, it's well, for one, I was in the BFRO. I got a privilege to be invited to the BFRO, and was taking reports in the area. They have a database, and you would look every once in a while where people would submit sightings, and you would pick something that was close to your area, and you'd lock it in and then make contact and meet the people, interview them, and if they sound like there was a legitimate sighting, if they had an opportunity to go out to the area that they had it, you would go there and just walk the length and see where the sighting, where the creature was at, and make some measurements and try to put a report together. And then that report was submitted, and if it felt like it was worthy enough, it would be published. And I kind of like that. And then I was also going to different areas. I've been to Kentucky, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, um, and I'm trying to think, Virginia. I've been to different areas there, and you're kind of looking for, has there been recent sightings? If so, what is the location? Why? Try to think of why maybe the sighting happened there. Was there a road crossing? Was there a river flow? Was there food or a uh, something in the area, crops or orchard or something? So try to think motivations and why it was there. And you go out at night and sometimes during the day, and you look for food sources, you look for valleys and topography, you look for hills and valleys, and it just spend time in the woods and kind of we call it boots on the ground. And you take hopefully recording mechanisms, either video or sound recorders that you can hopefully capture some of those little bits and pieces of evidence. You take it back and you try to localize it, and then if it's something that you and your friends think that is worthy, then you try to get that to somebody that might be able to put a little bit more research or experience on it to find out, no, that's a wolf, that's a gray wolf, or that's a gray fox howling, or hey, that's something legitimate. That was a good capture. That has the vocal range that isn't for a known creature or a known animal. So, and then after you do that for a while, you get bored, or you get to want to do more. So a couple of years ago, I put on a little conference in the area, in the Coshocton area. I reached out to Don Keating. At that time, we were, had his phone number and talked a few times and asked him if he wanted to participate in a local conference. He hadn't been really out in public for a while, and named it Sasquatch Triangle Conference, which he kind of coined the name Sasquatch Triangle because of the reports when he was really into researching Bigfoot that was in between the Conesville, which is where I live, New Cumberstown, where he lives, and Salt Fork. You connect the dots, and he had in the 80s and 90s, he had a lot of sightings in that area. So I kind of wanted to give him a little bit of a tilt the hat towards his work. And we had 3 years of having really nice conference, well attended. But unfortunately, I saw the writing on the wall. There was just a lot of Bigfoot conferences coming up left and right, festivals. And I didn't want to compete with that. Not that I didn't think I could put on a good product, but there's a responsibility, I think, when you're doing these conferences, is I wanted to educate and entertain. I didn't want egos. It wasn't an ego conference. It was to entertain and educate at an affordable price. And I just saw that everybody had bigger sponsors and bigger wallets than I did. And I decided that I was going to bow out after 3 years. So now I'm kind of getting back to basics. I got a couple of friends of mine that are local, and we go out. They go out a lot more than I do. But when I have the schedule that I can clear, because I still have to be responsible hospital, physical therapist, employee, I still got to go in, make sure I'm not sick for the day. But we go out and we either hike trails and hills that a lot of people would never do, or we get out in a nice area in the Woodbury or Wills Creek area, and we just sit and just sometimes we're waiting for something to be curious enough to come close to us. So I'm kind of back to the basics, which I really enjoy.
In your years of taking reports and talking to people and going to all these conferences, what are some of the more outstanding reports that you've heard?
I think the one report that I enjoyed, but it didn't go anywhere because it changed the witness a little bit, and I didn't think it was in a good way. There's some people get hooked in the Bigfoot, they go down the rabbit hole. Some people try to forget, or they get chastised by so many friends that they know it happened, but they don't really want to publicize that they saw Bigfoot. There's a gentleman who was in the area that I got to interview, and he was a young gentleman who had served 2 tours in Iraq, and he was taking his wife and young child out to go catfishing, which is something that you do in Coshocton County, Southeast Ohio. That's something fun. And he had a special area around, I think, the Wills Creek area. And he was getting the lanterns out and fishing gear out, and had drove his Jeep to the area, and he had fished there many, many times before. And his wife was kind of getting the child out of the car seat and getting, it's going to be a family event. That's what you do. You throw some bait out and you catch catfish. And as he's getting some stuff down, something threw a large rock and it splashed in front of him and got him wet. And him and his wife, I guess, had that kind of relationship where they poked at each other, and he kind of turned around and yelled at her and said, "What the heck are you doing?" She said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm still trying to get the kid out." And he kind of looked across the creek, and he said, 40, 50 feet on the other side was this human-like hairy creature, and just raising a lot of hell, and yelling and screaming and splashing and jumping. And he said it wasn't huge, it wasn't big, it wasn't like I would consider a monster. It was, he referred to it as like Chaka from Land of the Lost. It was a small, hairy creature, but just having a conniption. And he said, "Dave, I've been shot at. I've had mortars. I've seen snakes that were 8, 10 feet long, and large scorpions and spiders." And he says, "I've seen all kinds of craziness over in Iraq." He says, I've had, artillery going over top, and you don't forget that. He says, "But I was prepared. I was trained to handle that." He says, "I wasn't trained for this. It wasn't supposed to be in Coshocton." He just turned around and yelled at his wife to get back in the car, get in the car, get the kid in the car. And he went over and he kind of forcibly, put his kid back in the car seat and jumped in the car. And he said, "Dave, I had guns in my Jeep. I had guns. I could blow holes in walls." But he says, I was so panicked of what I saw and what it wasn't supposed to be there, that I just drove off. And he said it took me a couple days with a couple friends to make fun of me, to go back armed to go pick up my fishing gear and my lanterns and whatever else I left there. And they were all making fun of me. And he was like, if you're ever going to go hunting for that creature, he says, let me know. I want to be part of that. He says, I'm mad because it's taken away from me a fishing hole, an area that I felt safe in. That was a place that I went to go to recharge, and I can't do it anymore. He says that it's been taken away from me. So that was a kind of a negative response to seeing it. It really spooked him. And he, I kind of took the report and said thank you very much, and I really felt that he was sincere, and someone who has seen the experience of war and has been in combat, and something like that didn't shake him as much as seeing something that wasn't really imposing, but it just wasn't supposed to be there.
Yeah, it kind of shakes your reality. You don't believe that this thing should exist. It seems like, and so it shakes
Right,
your reality. And I've heard of many people that have had, some trauma from
right.
that experience. So you're a physical therapist, and you mentioned early on
Mhm.
about analyzing like the cast of footprints of Bigfoot. So tell me
Mhm.
about what you have discovered and how that's an asset to you.
Well, I think the asset is you read books and you learn from people that are either a little smarter than you or have longer time or experiences, like Dr. Meldrum. When I read some of his reports or his studies, I get excited because that's kind of my language. Mid-tarsal break, okay. Uh, Heel strike, uh, cadence, those things I get excited about. Um, I think the interesting thing is we're still talking about something that's 700, 900 to 1,000 pounds that is walking on 2 feet, and by some reports is very agile, darting across a road with one or two hops or steps, jumping over guardrails, going up inclines. Some people even said that's kind of paced vehicles going at a slower rate, not maybe 55 miles an hour, but kind of going down a country road, pacing you just a little bit. So, that's a lot of locomotion on a small Bigfoot. And when you start thinking about your human analogs, like Andre the Giant. Now, I grew up watching Andre when he was bigger and older, and he didn't move very well because his condition was really racking his back, and he had a lot of pain, so he wasn't very agile when he was at his later end of his life. But he was 400 or 500 pounds. Now, if you look at some of the earlier videos of when he was younger, there's a video or pictures that I saw that he was actually what we call rope walking, where he was wrestling somebody and actually took some steps up on the top ropes of the ring, and how agile he was, but he wasn't 400 or 500 pounds, but he was still very tall and very heavy. And then you look at people like Shaquille O'Neal, who again was another human analog, and how fast he could run up and down the court. And sometimes he didn't run very fast, and his effort was lacking. But his explosion of what he could do of going after a rebound and going for a dunk or a block shot, those are perfect examples of what the average Bigfoot can do. And it still amazes me that we have that information in a moment of time. A footprint is showing you the possibility of the size of that creature's foot. Cliff Barrickman from Finding Bigfoot, one of his sayings I absolutely love. He says, the footprint isn't the shape of the foot, it's the damage that the foot or the creature did on the environment. And that's perfectly correct, because the different sediments will distribute the weight of a said 700, 900, 1,000 pound creature in all kinds of different ways. And where we transition our force through our muscles, our gastrocnemius and soleus muscles, forward to our big toe and our foot. It has to use its whole front foot to leverage and push off of, and that's where we get that mid tarsal break. So, and something I've been trying to chew on, I guess, is that if we feel that the young at some time have the ability to cling to mom and dad and climb trees, maybe while they go hunting, where does that agile foot that is able to climb transitions into a more walking or pedal Terrian foot? If you look at some of the Aborigines and some of the less contacted human tribes, they utilize their feet, and they're splayed out, and they use their feet for climbing. Their toes are extra appendages that they utilize for weaving or climbing, or even just purchase on limbs or places that they're peering over for hunting. And I'm just amazed by the dexterity that the Bigfoot has in their feet. There are moments where I've seen documentaries where humans have had tragedy, either birth defects or an accident, where their arms are removed, and they learn to use their feet for their hands. And there was one case where a lady was a mother, and she took care of her baby. She changed the diaper, she bathed him and fed him and did laundry, and she didn't have arms. And it was just amazing how dexterous her feet were. There's another gentleman who I think he's a designer, engineer for NASCAR concerning engines, and he uses a computer and a mouse to work on diagrams and blueprints, and he drives himself to work with his feet. He feeds himself with his feet. The foot, I think, has a great opportunity to share information if we're able to look at it.
Absolutely. What do you think of the Patterson-Gimlin film as far as, the body weight and the movement on that?
When I first got into it, I got a chance to meet Bob Gimlin, and what a wonderful individual. He could be anyone's grandpa. I took the gentleman's word and what he said, because I've heard him say what happened that day, and sometimes as you get older, little details get changed a little bit, but in most part, he pretty much tells the same story. And so I think he's very consistent and believable. But I unfortunately, Roger Patterson, I think the more I research him and read about him and read about books and read about Bigfoot before Roger Patterson and the Patty film, I'm wondering the motivation of Roger Patterson. And so I don't think we're ever going to get a clear answer of the Patterson-Gimlin film of being 100% authentic until we can, if we're able ever to find the original film. I think there's generation copies that Mrs. Patterson has produced and made available, and other people have been able to obtain, but it's still a copy of a copy, and in good and bad, it's a double-edged sword. Whereas the best available video that we have should not be able to be CGI'd or artificial intelligence to make it any different. There's people that are right now trying to influence the vision of Patty and what they see with computer and CGI, and that's all well and good, and for whatever intentions they have, but the technologies are two different technologies, and you're really guessing. and altering your perception of what you think you should be seeing. So uh, I applaud that we still have that as a discussion, but I believe that Rod, Bob Gimlin was honest in his account, but I'm starting to see the Gimlin film as in we should be able to prove a lot more. And I've heard Dr. Meldrum and other people, discuss the evidence, the footprints, the knee angles, the shoulder height, arm length, and I'm wondering if technology could not reproduce it now. Maybe impossible for then, but can it be reproduced now? And I think yes is the answer. We could reproduce the Patterson-Gimlin film with what we have available now, but then if it can be done, is that add to or distract from the credibility of the film? One of the things I always heard was when I first got into Bigfoot researching was, if you look at the gorilla outfits of the time, they weren't the same, and they weren't even the same quality. It's all look like cheap gorilla outfits. And someone kind of pointed to the movie 2001 Space Odyssey, and there's a segment there where there's the obelisk, the black obelisk is there imposing, and there are creatures that are early man, remnants of man, hominid, Homo sapiens, that are angry and throwing a fit, and that was those outfits, those costumes were produced about the same time as the Roger Patterson film was filmed. And so I look at that and say, those are kind of believable. At the time, that was a really amazing cinematography, costumes, makeup, costume design. And so someone with a lot of money could make a suit or outfit, costume. So I'm continuously, I'm optimistic, but I'm continuously questioning. I don't think if you accept everything straight off, you're doing anyone any good. Like, even if I find I have a recording and someone says, "Oh no, that's a gray fox," it's not the end of the world. You've taken the time to prove or disprove your evidence, your hypothesis was correct. And I love it when they can't find evidence of it being something else. So I'm to a point where I've seen some evidence where some people think that the Patterson-Gimlin film isn't real. And I entertain that to widen my knowledge and widen my understanding.
That's a good point. Have you seen any of the work that M.K. Davis has done on the Patterson-Gimlin film?
Yes, I've seen it, and I think there's some work of his that should get a thank you and a pat on the back. And not to get into too much controversy, there's other things that I am very much not a fan of. I think the massacre part is just something that I think is I don't want to give it any more chance or talk about it. That's not my area. And but I think MK and other people who have analyzed videos that have been submitted to them, that's what we need to do. We need to utilize tools that we have available for us: electronics, computers, drones, night vision, infrared cameras, recordings, and be able to analyze those recordings on a spectrogram so we can actually identify maybe a pattern. But that would be what I would probably say about MK.
So what do you think Bigfoot is?
I think it's a relic hominid. I'm a flesh and blood researcher, believer. I think it's a live creature that bleeds, breeds, eats, breathes. That's where my skill set is going to be more uh, um, useful, and looking at evidence. Um, I think I have friends who believe in more of the woke, not woke, the woo um, portals and interdimensional creatures and some DNA and genes. And I enjoy listening to those friends that I trust and that they're honest and they're not trying to hoodwink me. And if it's ever proven that Bigfoot or Sasquatch has a way of going into another dimension, I'll be tickled pink. If you tell me that the Bigfoot are the natural inhabitants of the earth and we're gene spliced experiments from aliens, I'd be happy. It'd be great. But for my belief, for what I can do, what I want to accomplish in the world of Bigfoot, I feel I can offer more if it's just a creature that is undiscovered, and I think we're on the verge of it. But if you look at our history, there's like been 22, 23 different types of hominids that have been alive on Earth that we have, fossil evidence of. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, the Denisovians. There's even evidence DNA wise where we had some interbreeding. I hope that if you sprinkle in a little bit of the Indian lore and feeling that they was alive and in tribes that the Indians interacted with positive or negatively, depending on what location and what tribe that you were working with. I'm hoping that it would be hopefully proven that it's a distant cousin of ours, not related to any type of evolutionary from our own pathway, but something that branched off and just never ever reconnected.
Do you think they travel by waterways, caves, any of that sort of territorial things that they use as their mechanism for living within or moving around?
Yeah, the Legend of Boggy Creek, they always travel the waterways. I think that is something that is very strong in most people's belief, is that they use waterways to transverse. If you think about it, I'm 700, 800 pounds, and it takes a lot of energy, a lot of, and I'm exposed to a lot of dangers if I am walking through the woods, even though I'm the biggest son of a gun in the woods, bears and humans and cars and tree fall and whatever. But if I get in a water and I am somewhat buoyant, I can float and I don't have to do much. We kind of see people in inner tubes floating down the river, and they got they got a igloo or keg or something, and it's lazy. Indians utilize it with the canoes and stuff. We use water, and I think you don't have to struggle that much. You don't have to work that hard. You just float, and it takes a lot of pressure off. Even therapy, we use aquatic therapy to help people with movement disorders and with back pain, take some weight off. So I think they use the waterways 100%. The caves are a little bit more difficult. I probably about a year or two ago, I was said 100% definitely they use caves. And in fact, in my area, I was pursuing ideas of, there's a large cave system coal mine area here that when it was reclaimed, I talked to one of the old foremans that was a patient of mine. He said, we had to dynamite all the openings so people wouldn't get trapped in there. But if you go to the Ohio website of I think it's the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, they have in the area or the whole state where all the old coal mines were at. And they're all over Coshocton County, and they're all over a lot of areas in southeast Ohio, particularly a lot of the areas that have a lot of Bigfoot. Now, we all know by other cases like the Ohio Cavern and stuff like that, that Native Americans, tribes would utilize caves to handle the harsh, hot weather or the cold, cold weather, because it's inside the caves are a constant temperature. And even if they didn't live there permanently, but only temporarily, it is still a break from inclement weather. And also, you could store things, different food sources, supplies in the cave. So that was a strong theory of mine that maybe, you know, and the other part is you see Bigfoot here and then he disappears. Where does he go? And no one can find him. Well, maybe he knows a cave system. He gets in and takes off, and he's elsewhere by the end of the night. But I had a gentleman who talked about doing his job was for the government, looking at caves and safety of caves. And just like the old miners used to have canaries around to figure out if there was any fumes or gases that were dangerous, he said there's a lot of pockets and areas that it wouldn't be hospitable for even anything that was breathing oxygen. And especially with some of the coal mines, maybe now it's been broken down, but a lot of chemicals or elements that were used in the process of coal mining mixed with water and do your own chemistry set would not necessarily be a healthy substance to be around or breathe. So maybe there's a limit of what the caves can be utilized, but I still think that they are a small alcove that they get away from stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. At least they're in the wilderness and they're out there in areas where caves exist, so they may exactly be utilizing in some fashion. So what do
Right.
you think the government knows about this, and why do you think that people are told not to speak about it and just kind of push it under the rug and not talk about it?
Well, I think, well, we had the government, I think it was more of a wag the tail type of moment where it was trying to get everybody to look a different way. But the government's released acknowledged that there's unidentified aerial objects out there that they can't account for. And so there you go. You have all these decades of UFO sightings and potential experiences of aliens out there, and the government now says, hey, that's a possibility. They didn't say aliens, but they did say there are objects in the air that they can't account for. It wasn't us, it wasn't our enemy, we don't know who it's from. So if they're lying about that, then they could also be lying or repressing the information for Bigfoot or Sasquatch. I think if it became um, undeniable that they exist, it opens up a big Pandora's box of how we treat them. Are they human enough to have rights? Do they need protected? Is there a habitat need protected? If we consider them not being human or animalistic, do we use money to protect them and help them continue their existence? I mean, there are tribes of humans in the world that kind of internationally everyone's agreed to not have contact with. There are areas that are islands that are no fly, no contact zones. We would do something very terrible to uh, their culture and their lifestyle if we intervene. Um, so it opens up a big Pandora's box, and I hope that there would be a panel of I'm gonna say not Bigfoot experts, but people who are passionate about it and have demonstrated years of research and time and effort that would have ability to um, slowly work through that dilemma.
Exactly. A lot of people have seen orbs and things like that out there in the woods, near Bigfoot, areas. Have you observed those?
I have observed orbs in Kentucky. Over at Salt Fork, there's a place, the group camp, that other people have seen orbs around the area where we have a lot of Bigfoot action. I haven't seen anything over there, but in Kentucky I have. It was little red glowing balls of light that was running across the woods very fast, almost like if you had a greyhound dog race. And I couldn't account to what that was. And then in that same weekend, we had white light that showed up in the woods that was like a Friday night football game. Someone turned on the lights for the field, and you could see bushes and trees and limbs, and like a minute or two later, it's gone. So, and there's no way a vehicle, or this is before drones, it wasn't a helicopter. I have no idea what that was. So, early on, Bigfooters, the BFRO would say, no, we're not allowed to talk about that. We're not interested in anything like that. But I think now it's becoming more and more allowed or acceptable. And I've done some ghost hunting just as a side interest, and I've taken some of my gear that I've used with ghost hunting out just to see if there is any electronic phenomenon going around, just to start experimenting. And worst case scenario, you find out nothing. Best case scenario, you find something that maybe relates, and you then share or collaborate with other people and find out is that something they're seeing, and then we come up with something new.
So what have you discovered with that equipment?
Um, I haven't had any luck with anything that would be, here's a Bigfoot howl, and now I'm getting some readings on my EMP for phenomenon. I've had a voice in the middle of the woods like answer my questions that I heard and other people didn't hear. So that was kind of interesting because I was leading a group and they were taking a break, and I looked at the guy behind me and I said, all right, everybody ready? And I heard, let's go. And I started walking away and leaving the group behind, and they were still putting their water bottles together and grabbing their backpacks and stuff. They were like yelling at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, you guys said let's go ahead and go, let's go. And they're like, we didn't say a word. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. And the guy behind me, he said, I heard it too. And so I went back and listened to the recording because I had a recorder going back. I heard it. I said, all right, guys, it's about time for us to move on now. Let's get ready and go. And then I heard, let's go. And I was like, okay, there's something. So that's probably the only thing I could say that I have that's definite evidence or interest in that phenomenon. But it's always still fun to play. I've even like taking, and again, trying new things. Hunters will use ultraviolet flashlights to look for blood after they shoot a deer, and the deer's taken off and they can't find the deer. I'm every once in a while I'll get out my flashlight and just shine it around to see if there's anything that I can't see with my human eyes. Just is there something out there that's there that we're just don't have the right equipment for?
Right, exactly. So you mentioned some UFOs earlier, but have you seen any UFOs out while you're in the woods looking for Bigfoot?
Not looking for Bigfoot. My wife and I, again, we live in Coshocton, and we've was one time out on our deck, and one of our favorite pastimes is watching meteor showers or satellites going overhead, or the International Space Station. You get to kind of know where all the airplane flights are heading for Pittsburgh or whatnot. We were very tickled and blessed when we got to see some of the northern lights here in Ohio this year. And it's been a reoccurring phenomenon. But the one night we were watching and we kind of saw, we're like, oh, look, there's a flashlight, a satellite. And just as about we said that and kind of locked eyes on it because it was just going across the sky, it made acute angles, obtuse angles, stopped, and kind of like stayed in one spot for a while and then just took off and then was gone. And we're just like, that wasn't a satellite. So that was fun. I really enjoyed that. I had a small episode when I was a kid that I saw a cigar-shaped UFO kind of following the car that I was in when I was a kid. It had multiple color lights, but no UFO Bigfoot related story. Though I did take a report off of a gentleman who was reaccounting an occurrence that happened when he was younger, and he was near a rock quarry, stone quarry, and he saw, I can't remember which one occurred first, but I think it was he saw a Bigfoot near some heavy equipment. And it kind of looked at him and just kind of giving the idea. He said, in my head, I don't know if it was mind speak or not, but he said, in my head, it said, don't come in here or stay away. And he said he watched as the creature with one hand kind of break a small sapling, just cracked it in half, and then turned around and walked away. And he kind of guessed about the height of it because it was about as tall as some of the heavy equipment that was used in the stone quarry to move rock and whatnot. And he kind of went, okay, that was weird. And then the next day, he saw a UFO. And I can't recall right now off the top of my head the shape of it. But he said that was he had a 1-2 punch. He had a Bigfoot sighting one day as a young man, and a UFO the next. So that was his account, and he was very credible.
Yeah, I hear a lot of those. Well, I thank you so much for being with me today, and thank you for your valuable stories about Sasquatch and all of your research. And being a physical therapist, you certainly have a good eye for the evidence, I'm sure, that comes in.
Well, I thank you for having me on the show. And my big thing is I want everybody to go out and have fun, be safe. There are some people who are gifted with technology, so definitely utilize it. But don't underestimate the people that can just sit and read books. And those are things that can't be altered, changed, or influenced. Old magazines, old books, I think is going to be there's some evidence in there that we're missing. So encourage people to go back and read.
There's a lot of it out there, that's for sure. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end our sessions today, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you.